pandemic has led the world into a deep crisis mode, and the current direction will bring us into a long deflation. Central banks are trying to cope up with the situation, printing more and buying up the entire economy. Opinions are arising like this, either G2, G10, or G20, leading to a new world. So that change may be around the corner. So when that happens, who will actually thrive? The easy answer for that is who are prepared. Now, XRP is a deflationary currency. So as the economic deflation pushes the retail investors down and slows the regulators, the burn rate is still reducing the supply on a regular basis. So the actual value of the asset rises by each day as we move. Now, why this deflationary event, which may last 2 to 4 years, like if it is happening similar to that of 1930s, can be an opportunity for those who are in this crypto wonderland. Especially XRP, the standard, because the central banks around the world are looking to counter measures which can actually support them to surpass this crisis and to push the economy to the upper side. Now they are actually looking at central bank digital currency, and they believe central bank digital currency are a tool to recover from this crisis. Ripple is the only private sector company which actually works with 40 to 50 central banks around the world. And now we can see many central banks coming out with central bank digital currency projects, pilots. So you can actually ask, what about XRP? Don't worry, you will get the answer as we go forward in the video. As it is mentioned here, it is relevant. Whatever happens, if we are entering a central bank digital currency, our future is promising. Welcome to the Scientific Investor channel, where we discuss crypto and science behind investing regularly. As the general public is feeling the stress from the crisis, the United States dollar liquidity all around the world is kind of decreasing and is needing support from the Fed. And as it becomes digital dollar, those who borrow it or at least uses it for bilateral swaps will also have to receive in United States dollar in a digital version. So now all of a sudden or suddenly you need a bridge asset to go from dollar to euro. Now we have digital euro and digital dollar. So to do that, even this, as we move into a digital mode and a central bank digital currency mode, that looks like it's promising for at least those who have invested in the bridge asset, the universal bridge asset. Remember, the world is now standing on a huge debt pile, right? In this particular article, it actually highlights that. And it's actually stating $255 trillion in debt. So if you read that, global debt stood at more than 255 trillion. So if it is to service that loan, say you're paying back the interest or capital, say from euro to digital dollar or yen to dollar. So in this particular CBDC era, whenever they are going to do that too, you need a bridge asset. So those who have invested in this bridge asset have a promising future, in my opinion. Now this is an article showing that the current economic issue, the pandemic, is actually pushing everyone aside. So it is kind of comparing itself with the deflationary event of 1930s. So that Great Depression, which actually lasted, the effect was like 3 to 4 years, and if the same is to happen now, it may actually wipe out 20 to 30% of the economy in next 3 to 4 years. But based on current aspect compared to that 1930s, I believe it won't be just 25% over 4 years. It can be within 2 years at least 40 to 50%, because say for 1930s it wasn't global like what we have now. Now the globalization has reached to an extent where everyone is fully dependent on US dollar. The investing is happening in the US dollar. The debt or the borrowing is happening in the United States dollar, and the reserve status of dollar is being threatened. So in this particular aspect, if you consider this, you can actually see that the price will go down. So when we actually talk about such a financial crisis, keep in mind it shows that preventing the price deflation is not enough to offset a relative asset price meltdown. But lower policy interest rates increases relative asset prices. So as we wait in this deflationary period, asset prices will actually go down, whereas the asset value will be going up. Think in an inflationary event, your purchasing power is being reduced. The price of everything is going up, whereas the cash or the fiat in your hand is staying the same. So the purchasing power is going down. Now in a deflationary event, it's kind of opposite to that. You have the cash in your hand and the value of the assets are going down. So as an investor, what should you be looking at? Because way back, say a couple of years back, people were actually talking about a new world order coming up by G2, they actually say, China and US. But as of now, I don't actually think that's going to happen, because it may be G10, it can be G20, but it's at least an opportunity for many who are actually prepared. Because even if it is a world war or economic crisis, everyone, one side will lose and the other will gain. So if you are ready, then you can be on the gaining side financially. So when the deflationary events are coming up, like when we look at the history, it looks like currently we are entering into that particular area. So when we are entering into that one, these are some common understanding about XRP. Say in this particular document, it actually shows that XRP is a deflationary currency. We all know that, right? As the transactions increase in the XRP ledger, an amount of XRP is burnt after each transaction, or at least as a fee for each transaction. So what are the benefits of a deflationary currency or a deflationary asset itself? As the movement of value or exchange of value through this particular asset increases, the fee actually increases. That means the supply actually decreases. So in that particular aspect, you also have to understand, when this becomes a standard, you also need a reserve whenever you're opening an XRP account. Usually now it's 20 XRP, right? So as the value goes up, it's still 20 XRP. They may actually reduce the requirement if there is a consensus on the entire network regarding the price and the required units to actually open an account. That can actually happen in the future. So inflation is something which a central bank can control to an extent, but deflation is really hard for them to control. And that actually happens once in a long while. And for an example, they are illustrating Japan here. If you have actually read books or at least heard about Japan, you would be understanding this easily. Meaning it's been a long time since Japan is in a deflation. The interest rates are way down. They can't actually push it up. The economy is kind of floating above. So from 1990s, it's a long time, right? It's like 30 years they're still in the deflationary event. They haven't actually came out of it stronger. They're still feeling that pinch. So now the central banks have another tool, which is the central bank digital currency. Now this document from Bank of Canada actually shows that. Now when we move to the bottom here, now I know I actually saw the request to enlarge this one. So if we actually look at that, this is 100 and I'm trying to actually make this as big as possible and fit into this one. So hope you guys can actually read through this one. Now when we actually come down, we can actually see the potential monetary policy benefits of central bank digital currency. So when a central bank is issuing this is actually based on their liabilities. Currently it's using physical cash. Now they are turning it into digital. So when they are turning it into digital, they have more transparency there. At least they actually understand what is happening at the end. Like currently the cash transaction, they can't track everywhere. You can't go and install a CCTV camera everywhere around the corner to understand where the cash is moving. That's kind of impossible. Whereas this one, for government, at least for them, they get full control. But in order to implement this, to reach that real-time final settlement event between all the transactions, they need something different, right? So if we read it, issuing a central bank digital currency could potentially offer they counter the use of Libra. So they don't like the use of Libra. So now when people talk about FB and Libra coming out, taking that 2.7 billion users into account, I don't think that's actually going to work in that particular way. A CBDC could offer a new digital payment rail and an asset for real-time final settlement between individuals, a similar niche that physical cash has today. But you have to understand the physical cash is being eliminated in different countries. If you look at Nordic countries, you can actually see that they have eliminated the cash. They have moved into a digital area. But that is for domestic use cases. So when you actually go consider the cross-border payments with this digital version of fiats, you really need a bridge now. Otherwise, it's hard. If you're still using legacy systems, it's going to be really hard for you guys. And why the CBDC is going to be pushed out and rolled out soon? Because this event is here. This came out this month itself, and it shows central bank digital currencies as a crisis recovery tool. So governments are actually looking at it as this, right? It can actually support them to tackle this particular storm. Now, technologies that support and automate while mitigating risk at scale are vital component for functioning CBDCs. Have you ever heard about some technology which can actually scale to that extent and support all the central banks to interoperate with each other? At least particularly with US, UK and the top economies like that. Because when the bilateral swaps come into play, when the total debt taken in USD come into play, total debt taken in other currencies, say for example China gives in their currency, right, comes into play, it actually needs this kind of interoperability there. So that is kind of something which you need in a blockchain technology, and you can actually succeed from there. And at the same time, yes, I understand there are being doubts generated from many. I heard about USG coin being talked out, but guys, I would like, when someone is trying to actually put out some information in front of you and say that this is going to be a XRP killer, come on, how many XRP killer have you seen from this long time? Now USG, as they say, the gold coin, is kind of issued by an organization itself. They work US Gold Corp, so that's kind of a private entity. And if they are doing this, remember, they are actually building another walled garden, which is, yes, backed by gold itself, but that doesn't actually make it a currency like XRP, because it has that scalability and it is so cheap to use it, right? So when you actually see news coming out like this stating nations from Middle East, India, Africa, and everyone is kind of slowly getting into this one. This is not the entire world or central banks. These are some private institutions coming in. Say for example, if you take India as a country, there is a majority of gold ornaments being used in that country, right? And if you actually look at organizations which deal with that, or the businesses which deal with that, for them, the settlement in between them, using this coin would be so easy for them to do that. They can actually use their entire reserves as which they have in their fiat, and then just transact it to give their liabilities to each other. They can settle the transaction instantly with each other, right? So that is just for them. But still, say for example, if they are moving from one currency to another one, and from a different border, then they still have issues for regulatory clarity, because if they are using this as a investment, still I don't think that's going to be working, because they are showing the example here like BTC here, Ether here, and USD gold like this. If it is stable, it doesn't actually move, what is the purpose of investing in something which don't have that change? I don't understand. If they are saying that as stable, then it's not a perfect investment vehicle, because in order to make profit, you actually need volatility there, because without volatility, you are not gonna gain any profit. So they are comparing it with leading cryptocurrencies, as they say, and they show that they are stable. Now, if they are stable for 100%, they need, if they have to become the universal bridge currency, saying that they are the stable one, first they need the scalability to do that. Second, they need the adoption rate to do that. And third, the central bankers have around the world have to actually come and agree on this particular blockchain First thing. And the second thing, all the other commercial banks or other banks need to be connected with this. So the interoperability ledger again come into play. So if ISO 20022 has to be implemented, which is decided, and these new digital assets coming out backed by gold. Now this is not only the first one, right? From last 2 years, these kind of assets are actually coming out. So if this has to be incorporated appropriately with banks, I don't think that will actually work positively for them based on the current market, because the gold price will actually go up as the recession deepens, and once the economy start recovering, that entire scenario will be changing, because the economy is now entering into a deflationary event which may actually last 2 to 3 years. And at the same time, look at the entire cryptocurrency charts, you will understand we were actually in a deflationary event for cryptocurrency. We call it a bear market or whatever. The prices were going so down, whereas the value was rising, and along with the economic crisis, the buying power was actually reduced. So the accumulation for retail small investors were actually literally low considered to the high amount. If you previously remember what we stated in the previous video, we actually showed the top 3-4 accounts were accumulating huge. Why? They had the purchasing power and they knew the value of the asset, whereas even the small investors, they understand the value of asset, but they didn't have that purchasing power in hand to shoot it directly. And as we talk about adoption, we previously saw this, right? Now the crypto bitlord, who has 120k followers in Twitter, is showing this. You can buy Bitcoin directly using PayPal app. Now, okay, it's not only Bitcoin, automatically based on the customer or the consumer demand, based on PayPal's demand, they'll automatically expand that. And if you tweet like that, and if you look at the reply, you can actually see how it changed, like the logo, right? First, I was also confused seeing that, oh, PayPal. Then I saw a crypto bitlord. So there was some kind of difference. They're trying to push, the BTC guys actually try that a lot. And this is from XRP Crypto Wolf, and he's actually showing you Ripple is in top 5. So what you have to see is they're comparing it with institutions like Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, Consensus, and then Ripple. So if you look at the rest, you can actually understand one thing. What? Say for example, Coinbase is gonna gradually lose that position, because you all know when there is a volatility, Coinbase can handle it. So users are actually moving into Binance or other platforms. So automatically they are going to lose their market share if they are not going to improve. So in that aspect, Ripple will actually come more to that first side. And as the industry is getting mature, the blockchain industry is becoming mature, more interest is being developed. And even as we just talked about the USG gold coin, it is actually showing guys that blockchain, there is something known as blockchain, there is something known as digital assets, because many don't actually even understand that. If you go there and start explaining this, many don't even understand or don't even care. But once the shift is there in the central bank digital currency, gold-backed digital assets, they will then understand that there is a new arena of investing like this. The common retail or the normal guys who just invest in real estate or gold for the time being will actually see opportunities in this particular asset class, and they'll start dropping in slowly, a little by a little. If you have seen this Ripple drop, then it would be clear for you guys. But this, it's not that old. It came last week. And this is actually showing you digital payments will win. That's the first aspect. And the second one, XRP Ledger is a free, open source and decentralized technology. Many still doubt about the decentralization aspect of this asset. Then adapting to a new reality together. What we just talked about is about a new reality. So this isn't the 2020 anyone expected, but it's encouraging to see employees, communities, and industries coming together to actually act as normal or the new normal. Now they're actually talking about the pandemic, but still they are talking about the payments, because Ripple, the company, is focusing on payments, and the payments landscape is shifting. So as they used to say, like David Chaucer used to say this, to make contributing to XRP Ledger even more simple and collaborative, Xpring's Ripple developer team is coming up with new products. So it's not only Ripple, the company, using XRP Ledger. There is another or a lot of other organizations coming up, building on top of it, making utility for XRP, the token. So if you actually understand that, you can actually see the future for this asset, understand what's coming ahead in next 3 to 5 years, and then invest accordingly. Now, Michael actually sent me this one, and this really looks interesting because 6 central banks have actually received submissions from L3COS. It is a regulated digital currency operating system, kind of a blockchain, where it's kind of more concentrating on regulation. And as you see this, don't start saying, oh, XRP killer, another XRP killer has reached, because it's not like that, because we already know that Bank of England is undertaking on digital currency, Bank of France, Bank of Netherlands, Bank of Korea, Bank of Thailand. A lot of other central banks are actually addressing central bank digital currencies. And if you look at their website, previously we went through Bank of England, Bank of Canada, Bank of Korea, you would actually understand that these central banks were actually working with the company Ripple, and they were learning from them. So now the aspect is regulatory control. So they are using a new blockchain to actually understand about the digital currency regulations. So if this is actually coming into place, that still is for one particular CBDC. They still need a bridge asset, because here they are talking about that they are fast, safe and verifiable, regulated, transparent, efficient, legal. But for a payment mechanism, what you need is first scalability, then the fee should be so low and you should be able to handle every single transaction. Not like ETH or BTC getting congested whenever the network is going high in activity. So this particular item is actually another step towards the adoption. So once this actually kicks in, this is going to change the entire landscape, because this is following a submission to Bank of England, and that Bank of England documents, Bank of England proof of pilots, we actually went through them in detail. So I hope you guys understand how this is actually evolving. If you guys haven't actually read about the bilateral swaps and the credit history from US Fed going through other central banks, please go into this Board of Governor Fed Reserve site and get into credit and liquidity programs. You can actually read through that. That gives you much more information about dollar liquidity swap lines. They actually go in detail. If you go into their detailed files, you can actually understand how that actually happens. Because if you actually come into currency swap tracker, this one, they actually give you a long list of details of how this actually works from 2007 and how much it was in equivalent of dollar. Now that is showing from one particular corridor. Then you go down, you can actually see all the different corridors and the total amount they are being used. So this actually gives you an idea about if a currency shock is to appear now, what will be happening when it is an era of central bank digital currency. If you guys like the content, please do support the channel, hit that like button, and if you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I'll meet you guys on the next video. Bye for now.